I'll never forget that ordinary day when everything changed. It started like any other morning with the sound of my alarm blaring in my ear. I hit the snooze button, rolled over, and let out a groggy "Where am I?" As I sat up, the morning light streaming through my window made me squint. The clock read 7:04 a.m., and I knew it was going to be one of those days where I'd be running late for work. I quickly got dressed in the first thing I found on the floor, a pair of worn jeans and a faded Taco Bell t-shirt. It wasn't my favorite, but it would do. After grabbing a quick shower, I headed downstairs to grab some breakfast. The smell of freshly brewed coffee and sizzling bacon wafted through the air, making my stomach growl with anticipation. As I poured myself a bowl of cereal, I noticed something odd. The TV was on, but there wasn't any news or weather report playing. Instead, a repeating loop of a 90s pop song filled the air. It was like someone had programmed the radio to play the same song over and over again. Shrugging it off as a weird quirk of our local station, I finished my breakfast and headed out the door. The walk to work wasn't too bad, except for the fact that every step felt heavier than the last, like I was carrying around an invisible weight. I brushed it off as exhaustion and focused on getting to the office before my shift started. But little did I know, this ordinary day would soon turn into a descent into madness. I arrived at the Taco Bell on Main Street around lunchtime, feeling a sense of relief that I'd made it through my morning shift without any major issues. The line was short, and I ordered my usual, a Crunchwrap Supreme with extra sour cream. As I waited for my food, I noticed a peculiar smell wafting from the kitchen. It was sweet and savory at the same time, like something was burning but not quite. I pushed it out of my mind, attributing it to the lunch rush and the usual chaos that came with it. When my number was called, I picked up my food and headed to a small table by the window. As I took my first bite, the flavors exploded on my tongue. It was like a symphony of spices and seasonings. But then, something strange happened. The sounds around me began to distort and warp, like someone had taken a kazoo and run it over my eardrums. At first, I thought it was just the music playing in the background, but as the noise grew louder, I realized it was coming from inside my head. My mouth felt dry, and my tongue felt funny, like it was swollen or something. I tried to shake off the feeling, telling myself it was just the food or maybe I was getting a stomachache. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. That's when I saw her, a woman with long, curly hair and a bright yellow sundress, sitting across from me at the table next to mine. She smiled at me, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. It was as if she knew exactly what was happening inside my mind. It wasn't until the woman finished her meal and got up to leave that I noticed she was gone. 1 minute she was there, smiling at me, and the next she vanished into thin air. I was left sitting alone at the table, wondering if it had all been some kind of strange hallucination. But as I looked around the restaurant, I realized that everything felt off. The lights seemed brighter, the colors more vivid, and the air felt thick with an otherworldly energy. I got up to leave, but as I reached for my wallet, I saw that it was on the table next to me. I must have dropped it when I stood up. A chill ran down my spine as I realized that time seemed to be slowing down around me. The clock on the wall ticked at a glacial pace, and the sounds of the restaurant, the chatter of the customers, the beeping of the microwave, the hiss of the coffee machine, all seemed to be coming from far away. I felt like I was trapped in some kind of surreal nightmare. And then I saw him, a man with a pale face and sunken eyes, sitting at the counter, sipping on a drink. He looked familiar, but I couldn't quite place him. As I watched, he stood up and walked out of the restaurant, disappearing into the crowd like a ghost. It was then that I heard my name being called. "Hey, you!" from outside the restaurant. But when I turned to look, there was no one there. And that's when it hit me, something was very wrong. It started with whispers in the office, murmurs of a mysterious phenomenon that was affecting people who had visited Taco Bell. At first, it was dismissed as a prank or a weird fluke, but as the days went by and more people disappeared, the rumors spread like wildfire. Some said they saw strange creatures lurking around the restaurants at night, while others claimed to have heard eerie whispers on the phone when they called to order. I tried to brush it off as small-town gossip, but deep down, I knew that something was very wrong. The local news picked up on the story, and soon we were seeing headlines like Taco Bell mysterious disappearances and a resident's fear for their lives. It was all a bit much, and I found myself avoiding the topic altogether. But then, I saw a poster on the community board at work, featuring a grainy photo of a Taco Bell employee with a caption that read, "Have you seen our missing coworker?" The image was grainy, but there was something about the employee's eyes that sent shivers down my spine. It was as if they were looking right through me, accusing me of being complicit in their disappearance. I ripped up the poster and tried to focus on work, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was being watched. And then, I saw him, a man sitting at the end of the row, staring intently at me with an unnerving intensity. As the days went by, the disappearances continued to mount. People who had once been skeptical of the rumors now found themselves searching for answers, their faces etched with worry and desperation. The local police department was overwhelmed, and the FBI was called in to assist. But as they combed through the evidence, they found nothing concrete, no bodies, no signs of foul play, just an eerie silence. Desperation set in, and people began to turn on each other. Conspiracy theories spread like wildfire, with some claiming that Taco Bell was behind the disappearances, while others believed it was something more sinister. I watched as a group of protesters gathered outside one of the local restaurants, holding signs that read Taco Bell is a front for alien abductions, and the Crunchwrap is a mind control device. It was absurd, but also terrifyingly plausible. As I walked through the crowd, I saw people I recognized from work, their faces gaunt and haunted. They were all searching for something, answers, closure, or just a way out. And then I heard it, a faint humming noise that seemed to be coming from inside my head. It was like a siren call, drawing me in with its sweet, melodic tone. I felt myself being pulled towards the nearest Taco Bell, as if by some unseen force. The words "come and get your Crunchwrap on" echoed in my mind, taunting me with their promise of salvation. But what lay inside was anything but. As I pushed open the door, a wave of heat washed over me, and I stepped into the abyss. I stepped inside the Taco Bell, my heart pounding in my chest. The air was thick with the smell of grease and spices, and I could feel the weight of expectation bearing down on me. The lights were dimmed, and the only sound was the soft hum of the kitchen equipment. A figure emerged from the shadows, a woman with long, curly hair and a bright yellow sundress. She smiled at me, and I felt a jolt of recognition. It was her, the one who had vanished in the restaurant all those days ago. "Welcome back," she said, her voice dripping with sweetness. "I've been waiting for you." She led me to a table where a steaming hot Crunchwrap Supreme sat before me. I picked it up, feeling an inexplicable sense of longing. As I took my first bite, the flavors exploded on my tongue. It was like a symphony of spices and seasonings. But as I chewed, I felt something strange happening inside my head. My mind began to play tricks on me, making me question what was real and what wasn't. The woman's smile seemed to stretch across her face, her eyes glinting with mischief. "You're getting close," she said, her voice dripping with temptation. "Close to what?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She leaned in, her breath hot against my ear. To the truth. Suddenly, the restaurant around me began to distort and bend, like a funhouse mirror reflecting my deepest fears. The woman's smile grew wider, her eyes flashing with intensity. "You're not who you think you are," she whispered. "You're not even human." I felt myself spinning, my mind reeling with the implications. What was true? What was real? It was supposed to be a normal Taco Tuesday. I walked into the Taco Bell, ordered my usual Crunchwrap Supreme, and waited for my food to arrive. But as I sat down at a table by the window, I noticed something off. The other customers seemed different. They were all staring at me, their eyes fixed on me with an unnerving intensity. I tried to shake it off, thinking they were just being weird, but as I looked around, I realized that everyone was wearing the same uniform, a bright yellow sundress with white flowers. It was like we were all trapped in some kind of bizarre costume party. The woman with the curly hair and bright yellow sundress reappeared, this time with a tray of steaming hot tacos. "Taco Tuesday," she said, her voice dripping with sweetness. "But today it's taco terror." She handed me a taco with a strange symbol etched into the shell. I took a bite, expecting the usual flavors, but instead I was hit with a wave of intense, burning pain. My mouth felt like it was on fire and I could feel my tongue melting away. The other customers began to chant, their voices rising to a fever pitch. "Taco Tuesday," they screamed, their eyes fixed on me with an unnerving intensity. I tried to stand up, but my feet felt heavy, as if rooted to the spot. The woman's smile grew wider, her eyes flashing with malevolent glee. "You're next," she whispered, her breath hot against my ear. Suddenly, the restaurant around me began to distort and bend, like a funhouse mirror reflecting my deepest fears. I was trapped in a nightmare from which I couldn't wake up. I stumbled out of the Taco Bell, my mind reeling from the terror I had just experienced. But as I looked around, I realized that something was even more disturbing. The other customers were all wearing matching uniforms, their faces blank and expressionless. They seemed to be in a trance-like state, repeating the same phrase over and over. "Crunchwrap conspiracy." I tried to shake it off, thinking they were just caught up in some kind of mass hysteria, but as I looked closer, I saw something that made my blood run cold. On their uniforms, there was a small logo, a stylized image of a Crunchwrap Supreme, surrounded by cryptic symbols and codes. It was like something out of a conspiracy theory novel. I remembered the symbol on the taco shell from Taco Tuesday and how it had burned my mouth. Could this be connected? I decided to investigate further. I snuck back into the restaurant, trying to blend in with the crowd. As I made my way to the kitchen, I saw the woman with the curly hair again, this time standing in front of a massive computer screen. She was typing away, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she inputted code after code. "What are you doing?" I asked, trying to keep my voice down. She turned to me, her eyes gleaming with intensity. "I'm unraveling the Crunchwrap conspiracy," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's bigger than we ever could have imagined." Suddenly, the computer screen behind her flickered to life, revealing a shocking truth. The Crunchwrap Supreme was not just a food item, it was a mind-control device. The symbols and codes on the logo were part of an ancient language, used by a secret society to manipulate people's minds. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. My whole understanding of reality was turned upside down. Was everything I thought I knew about my world just a lie? As I stood there, trying to process the revelation about the Crunchwrap Supreme, I felt a strange sensation wash over me. It was like my mind was being pulled apart and put back together again. The woman with the curly hair took advantage of my distraction to continue typing away on her computer. Suddenly, The screen behind her flickered to life, revealing a menu board that seemed to stretch on forever. Each item on the menu was displayed in vivid detail, like a hologram or a 3D image. I saw the Crunchwrap Supreme, of course, but also other items that I had never noticed before: the Doritos Locos Tacos, the Nachos Bel Grande, even the cinnamon twists. Each item seemed to be pulsing with an otherworldly energy, like it was alive. The woman turned to me, a look of excitement on her face. "It's happening," she said. "The visions are coming." She reached out and took my hand, leading me to the menu board. I felt a surge of energy as we stood before the display. Each item seemed to be calling to me, tempting me with its secrets. I saw flashes of images, memories that weren't mine, yet somehow felt familiar. I saw visions of people eating, laughing, and smiling. But there was also darkness, people crying, screaming, and running away in terror. The woman's grip on my hand tightened as the visions grew more vivid. "What are we seeing?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She shook her head. "I don't know," she said, "but I think it's trying to tell us something." As I stood there, mesmerized by the visions on the menu board, I felt a strange sensation in my mouth. It was like my taste buds were being pulled apart and put back together again. The woman with the curly hair watched me with an intense gaze, her eyes seeming to bore into my very soul. And then, without warning, my mouth began to burn. A fiery heat spread through my tongue and lips, making it feel like they were turning to ashes. I tried to speak, but all that came out was a hoarse whisper. "What's happening?" I managed to croak. The woman didn't answer. Instead, she reached out and touched my forehead with her finger. A wave of vision washed over me, like a tidal wave crashing against the shore. I saw cities burning, people screaming, and buildings crumbling to dust. It was as if the very fabric of reality was unraveling before my eyes. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, everything stopped. The visions faded away, leaving me feeling shaken and disoriented. But when I looked down at my hands, I saw that they were covered in a fine layer of ash. My skin felt dry and cracked, like the taste buds on my tongue had been reduced to nothing more than dust. I stumbled backwards, gasping for air as if I had been underwater too long. The woman stood before me, her eyes gleaming with an otherworldly intensity. "You've seen the truth," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Now you'll have to live with it." The restaurant was empty now, the only sound the soft hum of the kitchen equipment. I stood amidst the wreckage, my eyes scanning the room for any sign of life. But there was none, just me and the woman with the curly hair. She stood before me, her eyes fixed on mine with an unnerving intensity. "What do you want from us?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady. The woman didn't answer. Instead, she held out a small notebook, its pages filled with scribbled notes and diagrams. "The truth is here," she said, her voice low and husky. "But are you ready for it?" I hesitated, unsure of what to do, but something about the notebook drew me in. I took it from her hand, feeling a surge of determination. I had to know what was going on. What had happened to the people who came here? Why did they seem so changed? I began to flip through the pages, scanning the notes and diagrams for any clue. And then, suddenly, it hit me. A phrase kept repeating itself: "The food is not what it seems." I looked up at the woman, my eyes locked on hers. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I realized the truth. The Crunchwrap Supreme wasn't just a meal. It was a key to something much bigger, something sinister. And now that I knew, I had to find out what it was. As I delved deeper into the notebook's secrets, I discovered that the Crunchwrap Supreme was just a small part of a much larger conspiracy. The food at Taco Bell was not just ordinary food, but a tool of mass control. The ingredients were laced with mind-altering chemicals, designed to manipulate people's thoughts and actions. And once you took a bite, There was no going back. I felt a sense of horror wash over me as I realized that the people who had eaten at Taco Bell were not just ordinary customers, but unwitting puppets in a twisted game. The woman with the curly hair seemed to be waiting for me to finish my research, her eyes gleaming with an otherworldly intensity. "It's time," she said, her voice dripping with menace. "The apocalypse of taste buds is upon us." And with that, the kitchen erupted into chaos. The lights flickered and died, plunging us into darkness. The air was filled with the acrid smell of burning food, and the sound of screams echoed through the corridors. I stumbled backwards, my heart racing with fear. But as I looked around, I saw that it was not just the people who were reacting to the food. The very fabric of reality seemed to be unraveling. The laws of physics were bending and warping, like a canvas stretched to its limits. And at the center of it all, the Crunchwrap Supreme sat on the counter, pulsing with an otherworldly energy. It was as if the food had become a portal to another dimension, one where the very rules of taste and flavor no longer applied. I felt my own senses begin to distort, my perception of reality fragmenting like shards of glass. And then, everything went white.